Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
Hello, everyone. This week we have Big Questions Book Club. And the topic for the book club this week is musical memoirs. And the question is, are memoirs becoming the new revenue option for musicians? Talk about some that you have read or some that you would like to read. The bonus question is there a musician that you wish would write a memoir that you would look forward to reading? So based on looking at my bookshelf, it would seem that, yes, memoirs are becoming the new moneymaker for lots of musicians. I have quite a few on the shelf. I've read some of them. My wife has read probably more of them. She's probably read about 20 books about David Bowie in the last year, but I don't think Bowie wrote his own memoir. Lots of interview books out there, but none that he penned himself. But I'll tell you about some. Here are two that I have read. The first one I'm going to show you is called Life by Keith Richards. I did enjoy this book. It's divided in like three parts. The first part is about his childhood. The middle part is about his drug frenzy, rock and roll days. And then the last part is sort of more modern day Keith and where things are within the last few years, I guess. I thought it was pretty good. It lagged a little bit here and there. And it is truly amazing that he is still alive based on all the stuff that went on. It's pretty crazy. Another one that I have read that I did not care for was written by someone named Michael Balzary, otherwise known as Flea.
Oh.
Acid for the Children. And Rodney, you know where that title comes.
That is a two Three Stooges song. Sammy
Right.
Davis, he only had one eye, but we gave acid to the children. Acid to the children.
Yeah, Dick Rude, yeah. So yeah, it's I think I read it in about 2 days. It's pretty light. Some of the chapters are maybe only 2 pages long. It's just kind of a weird, and the weird thing is going into it, I didn't know this about it, was that it deals with nothing related to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's all about his childhood, and it ends right when he starts the band or gets in the band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The one thing that I forgot about, or maybe I knew about, but I forgot, I didn't know that he was the bass player for Fear for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so those are two that I've read. Now I've got two that are on the shelf that I have up on deck that I would like to read. The first one is called Girl to City by Amy Rigby. And it's, she was born in Pennsylvania. She went to New York City in around 76, I think. And she was in a band called The Last Roundup and a couple of other bands. She has since gone on she's had quite a solo career. And she ended up getting married to Reckless Eric. And they lived in Europe for a while, but now they live in upstate New York. It's a small world, really. So I would like to read that. My wife has read it and said it's very good. And here's another one that I would like to read. It is called Face It by the one and only Debbie Harry. So, Debbie needs no introduction. We all know who Debbie Harry is. Apparently it's very good. So those are two I have on deck. As for someone who I wish would write a memoir, I don't really have anybody. I do have a bunch of books on XTC, and one of them has a lot of interviews with Andy Partridge, but I'm wondering whether a memoir written by him would be any good. I'm not sure. I think I probably have enough information about the band based on the other books that I have on the shelf. So anyway, those are my books recommendations. They count as recommendations too. So go for it.
Dean, you loaned me the Keith Richards book. Do you remember what politician makes a surprise appearance in the beginning? The man who basically lets Keith Richards get away with sneaking drugs across state line?
I forget.
Here's a clue. He also helped Josh Duggar get away the first time. That's right, Mr. Huckabee. makes a appearance. And yes, I'm not kidding. In the beginning of the book, they get pulled over in Arkansas. Mike Huckabee's the governor, and he's really excited about meeting Keith Richards, and they don't search the car or anything. God, Mike Huckabee was dropped as a child. So I had a rule. I did not read any musician's autobiography for most of my life. I did not. And then one day I was contacted by the Philadelphia Review of Books, and they asked me to review this book, which is called I Dreamed I Was a Very Clean Tramp by Richard Hell. And I'll put a link out there to my review. My review is still up. If you can't read the review, you can't read the book. But if you like my kinetic, highbrow, lowbrow, or unibrow, as I call it, style of writing, the review is out there, and you can read that. So after I read that, I started reading a bunch of musicians, because I actually did like this book. It was surprisingly intriguing, and he's also a very smart guy. So it's kind of breaking my musician rule. Most musicians are literally too dumb to write a book. There's somebody, I once wound up in a conversation with a musician. I said something about some band being, used by the corporations or something. And the guy was like, why can't music just be music? And that's one of the dumbest things you can say. So I wound up explaining postmodernism to him. And I'm like, well, see, everything is imbued with a sense of irony. And I realized not only did he not understand the concept of irony, but the word imbued went over his head. And he had just been called like plaintive, thoughtful, and intellectual by a magazine. So I was like, oh, dear God. Yeah, the average musician, you have to go really far down the evolutionary ladder to like a flatworm or a paramecium to find something dumber than the average musician. So, all right, so that was the first one I read. And then Jill from Hot Breakfast, she loaned me a copy of Patti Smith's Just Kids. And I read that, and that will just take your heart and break it. It's about Patti Smith's friendship with Robert Mapplethorpe, and you wind up learning so much about Patti, and that really is an excellent read. Again, she's a writer, so she can put this thing together, and it just comes off. At the end of it, you can just feel your heart snap, like you will actually cry. Then after that, I will put the link up to it, because again, I don't have these two books with me because I think I returned one, and I think the other one is out on loan. The one that's out on loan is Chris Connelly, Concrete, Bulletproof, Invisible, and Frog. You've read that? I may have loaned it to you.
Yes,
I did. We found out where the book went. Okay, that's good. I like when my books get out there and people read them. It's My Life as a Revolting Cock. Chris is very smart. This is a good read. And he has a line, which is, the club was about as crowded as the Mary Celeste. And I'm like, there are certain musicians who have no idea what the Mary Celeste is. And this guy's using it as a metaphor. Good for you. And it is a great read. At one point, he gets in a fight with somebody who might be Luke Perry because he slept with his girlfriend. It's like, this guy shows up. I think he's on like 90210. He's like, I'm going to stop you from sleeping with my girlfriend. I'm like, hey, I've already slept with your girlfriend. And the beginning of it, I'll put a link up. There's a beginning of it. I guess there's an audio book, and he reads from it. And the beginning is him on a tour bus and the insanity that happens, including it's got vomit, drugs, everything you want in a story. So that's really, really good. So then after I read that, I actually was at a signing and stuff and was attending a thing for this. This is Amanda Palmer's book. This is called The Art of Asking, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Let People Help. And this is really a book about economics. This is how people survive. Zug von Rock from Angel Spit once said something, among the brilliant things he said, one of the things he said was, there's no middle class in rock and roll. Either a guy's struggling to pay the rent or he's buying a $3,000 jacket. And this is about sort of an attempt to develop a middle class in rock and roll. A very interesting read from that perspective. Now, this is I'm going to plug a book from a friend. This is Rob Zabrecki. Rob Zabrecki is now he was in a band called Possum Dixon, but he's now a magician. He appears on TV well, he's a magician. He'd have to appear. He was on Stump, Penn and Teller, but he was also on from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Jack Parsons. Jack, the sexiest man alive, Jack Parsons. He was in a miniseries about him. But again, great book. I like reading stuff. I like Neil Gaiman's stories about his youth because they're completely different than how I grew up. And Rob grew up out on the West Coast. And I always wondered if I'd grown up on the West Coast, how would my life be different? Rob grew up out there. It's a fascinating read. There are a couple of friends of ours in here. We make a little guest appearance in here, but you should still read it. And there is, again, part of this. Just be prepared. Part of this will break your heart. And again, you will cry. So that is your warning. All right, up next on the list is
We're doing the whole library here.
Yeah, I have thousands of books, and I didn't realize I had that many of these. This is Lonely Boy by Steve Jones. And again, surprisingly a good read. Steve Jones, not an intellectual, you could say, but a smart guy. And this is pretty much just what it'd be like, I guess, to sit down if he was still drinking, which he isn't, and just have a pint with Steve Jones. It's very straightforward, but it's good stories and it's a lot of fun. Which brings me to the last two on my list. I have, oh, by the way, before I do that, I just want to make a mention. One book I would like to read is Cozy Fanny Tootie's book, which is called Art, Sex, Music. I really want to read that. So if you have a copy, it's laying around. No, I'll buy it. I'll go to the store and buy one of those. All right. So these are two that I have not read, and they're from Dee Dee Ramone. This is Lobotomy, Surviving the Ramones, and Chelsea Horror Hotel. Now, I have not read these, but I know somebody who has. So give me a second. Hey, honey, could you come up to the office for a minute? Sure thing. Okay. All right. So my wife has read both of these. Now, just so you know, this is the kind of book that my wife normally reads. It's Catherine of Aragon. So I was just shocked and befuddled to see these over in her library. Hi, Sparky. Come on, just scoot on in. Scoot on in. All right. Okay. Yeah, right. This is
Hi, everybody.
Dean was just telling us about the time he tracked a drifter for 3 days and then killed him with a crossbow. Right? But anyway, while we were talking about that, these books came up. Lobotomy, which is Dee Dee Ramone, Surviving the Ramones, and also Chelsea Horror Hotel. You've read both of these, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are they good books?
I loved them. I loved both books.
Okay, I was not expecting that. I thought you were going to say that they were written from the style of Dee Dee Ramone. So all right,
they are. They are totally written in the style.
Oh, he wrote both of them?
Yeah, he wrote Dee Dee Ramone wrote two books. So if you're a budding author out there who just can't get around to writing books, Dee Dee Ramone I think he wrote the second one after he died. Okay. By the way, the good thing about the second one, this one is fiction, but it's on the shelf.
Semi-fiction.
Yeah, it's semi-fiction. It's on the shelf next to Ayn Rand because it's alphabetical. So it's like sitting up there next to the Fountainhead Atlas Shrugged. All right, so quick. Okay, so was there anything from Lobotomy that you remember that stands out in as something interesting?
Okay, so in Lobotomy, there's a story that he's talking about how he was always getting the ambulances called for him because ODs and whatever else. And I think one time it was either a paddy wagon or it was an ambulance, and they got outside of the hospital, and according to Dee Dee, he kicked the doors open and ran off so the cops couldn't catch him. And so there's
Narcan strikes again.
So I think one of the books has I think it's Lobotomy. He talks about somewhere in there about driving a vehicle onto a sports field up in New York, and and admits to sometimes telling some tall tales.
I was gonna say, I wonder if people had to tell him these stories later. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of wondering. I'm like, I was just imagining it because I can imagine. If Marky wrote a book, that's who I imagine would write, because Marky had done a lot. I'm not putting Dee Dee down. I'm sure he was a fascinating person. Does he mention his girlfriend who stabbed him in the ass?
I don't remember.
Okay, he had a girlfriend who stabbed him in the ass.
I read both books a year before he died, so it's been some time.
Okay, and now you met him, right?
Well, if you want to call it that.
Well, you stood in line. I met Umberto Eco by standing in line. Yeah.
So what happened was he was doing a book signing at Borders when Chelsea Horror Hotel was coming out. And so I was like the very last person in line, and I started reading the book while I was in line. And like pretty much in the first couple of pages, he's talking about how much he hates Ramones fans and how annoying they are. And so I get up there and and he's telling it in context of somebody in the Chelsea Hotel. They're kind of passing each other in the stairwells, and the guy's telling him, hey, you know, I'm a huge Ramones fan, I love your band, da 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 da. And then so this is the context. So when I got up to him where he was signing, I figured if Ramones fans annoy him, you know, so I just put the book down and I slid it across the table at him. And he looked at me and he signed it and then turned his head like fuck you, you know, like okay, so you know, like all right, you know, you're like one of my heroes and you just like gave me this major fuck you, you know. So
an angry member of the Ramones? You heard it here first, people. All right. And how's he just one quick question, because I do remember you saying, and I've forgotten about until I saw these, that you had gone and gotten his autograph. How's he feel about the other members, like Johnny in particular?
Oh God, he's always like, you know, yeah, in both books he's like complaining about the other members and really kind of is pretty nasty about, like, you know, shame, like kind of glam shaming them, you know, like, hey, Joey was like in, you know, used to dress glam before it was before we were Ramones, and you know, the you know, so it was kind of like, you just picture this 6 foot some, you know, inch guy, you know, in like,
we have a new term, glam shaming. Don't glam shame me, man. All right. Now I know you're swamped with stuff, but before you split, I did want you to stay for the next segment. Okay. Just not next segment, but just next book I have, and this will be pretty quick. I happen to own the greatest musician memoir of all time. This is Mikey Wilde, The Life and the Legend by Mikey Wilde. Yeah. So I'm going to now we met at a Mikey Wilde concert.
Yes.
Although we tell people we met at a fake CrossFit competition in Moscow, because that's where Madison Cawthorn met his wife. And I think those kids are going to make it, don't you? Madison Cawthorn. And I'll tell you about it later. Anyway, so so this is chapter 19. And people, I just want to say, this is very romantic. So
this is also another book that I haven't read for a while.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, very romantic. If you're watching this on video, just go get your significant other and put your arm around them and enjoy this. Madison Crawford, you can be cool. You don't have to, but for the rest of us.
Can I just say something really quick before we move on to that book, pertaining to the 2 Dee Dee Ramone's books? I actually enjoyed them much better than Madame Bovary.
Well, there you have it. If you're in high school and they assign you Madame Bovary, so how about Dee Dee Ramone? Oh, Flaubert. I'm sorry. We're sorry. What's that sound? It's Flaubert rolling in his grave, generating electricity from that. All right. Well, it's a short show. So I have to get romantic now. Okay. So just imagine candlelight dinner between us. Chapter 19 of Mikey Wilde, The Life and the Legend. Let me give you your hand. There we go.
I feel like we're arm wrestling.
We are arm wrestling. The only girl I will fuck is Tanya Harding. I'll pay $1,000 for her to fuck the shit out of me, or for me to fuck the shit out of her. Whichever comes first. Or the girl from Hole, or Sonic Youth. I love Kim Gordon. I'm a ladies' man. I'm now 40 years old, and my birthday is January 25th. I'll be 41 next year. The math works out. Forget about birthdays. That song called Stuff My Bunny. It's about getting a girl pregnant. You stuff the bunny up in there to see if she got pregnant. If it lives or dies. I thought the rabbit drank the urine or something. I guess the rabbit died, but it's up to the rabbit. Here we go.
More?
Yes.
Okay.
I like tits and ass. I think everybody does. I love you. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Good night, everybody.
My wife and the romantic stylings of Mr. Mikey Wilde. Thank you so much. Okay. If we can move on from there.
You know what? Really quick though, it's funny that you mentioned that, because just the other day I found a whole bunch of DVDs, like burned DVDs, and in a pile, and one of them was this one called maybe we can take this to Hollywood. I don't know if you saw this, but a friend of mine that I went to film school with back in like the late 90s, I didn't see him for a while, and I ran into him like 5 or 6 years ago, and he made this movie with Mikey, and it's like they were trying to make a movie about him as a Vincent Price character, but like he ended up making this kind of like I should give it, or like lend it to you guys. It's great. I don't know if he ever made any copies. I think he showed it at a festival or something, but never.
I want to be clear also, I'm not making fun of Mikey. I think this is actually very, very smart. He was a wonderful guy, a good friend. I miss him, but I love the style of the writing. There's a genius to it. There's, this weird sort of almost like
he talked like that too.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, he would stuff would just pop out in the middle of stuff. I have another of his book where he's like, so and so says there is no God, but I say there has to be a God because everything happens for a reason, and we couldn't live in a universe without reason. I like girls. He's not wrong. All right, sorry about that. I know that was a little lengthy, but
that's cool. Well, we lost Joe, I think.
Rodney actually read 2 of the ones I read and liked, but the one I was going to say is Just Kids, and that is a fantastic book. I will second Rodney's opinion on that Patti Smith book. Also, one of my very favorites is, of course, Bob Dylan, Chronicles Volume 1. I read it twice, but he has a great way with words, and it's a non-chronological memoir. It doesn't go in chronological order. He skips around, but he does a really good job of it. Just like I guess Mikey's not chronological either. So they're similar. I haven't read Mikey Wilde's yet.
He goes from 40 to 41, so that's
he probably compiled it from like cocktail napkins or something like that he'd written on.
But I'm anxiously awaiting Volume 2. It's been decades and there's no Volume 2 yet, but who knows. So yeah, I'd also like to give an honorable mention to the memoir by Jeff Tweedy. He's a pioneer of what you call dad rock, of the band Wilco, also Uncle Tupelo. His memoir is called Let's Go So We Can Get Back. And what I liked about his writing style is it's humorous, it's self-deprecating a lot of times. It seems like you really get to know him and the life that he's led. He doesn't really dwell on the music like Wilco or Uncle Tupelo so much as his personal life. And who would I like? I have a couple books that have been given to me, which I haven't gotten around to yet. One of them is Dave Grohl's The Storyteller. I got for Christmas. No, I got for my birthday. Doesn't really matter, but I'm looking forward to that one. And a couple Christmases ago, I got an Elvis Costello memoir. I forget what it's called. Might be Disappearing Ink or something like that.
We have that one on the shelf here too.
Is it by him, Elvis?
Yeah, he did write one. Yeah.
So yeah, it's very daunting. It looks too long for me to want to read, but you never know. That's it. Too long.
It's no Madame Bovary, I'll tell you that.
Is there anybody you wish would write one?
I would like Rodney to write one.
No. Go. You can read my writing stuff. If you want to read them, go. There'll be a link for the review.
There's never going to be a memoir. Yeah. Okay.
I'm very.
Well, I guess that's that.
That's the title of it right there. Never gonna be a memoir.
Yeah, never gonna be a memoir.
Well, I chose the 2 Davies brothers autobiographies to talk about, and because I feel like they're good representations of different styles of writing the memoirs, and it's also interesting because they're brothers and in a band together, so the different perspectives from some of the stories or the absence of some stories in them. But what stands out is the X-Ray book. It's Ray Davies' book, and it's like subtitled The Unauthorized Autobiography, which sounds interesting to begin with. But it's basically like written from a narrator's point of view who gets hired to kind of interview an elderly Ray Davies. And at times I think the narrator kind of becomes him. I read this about, oh my gosh, it was like 15, and I just found it on the shelf. I don't have the cover for it, but I always take dust jackets off because I don't. Oh, this was I stole this from a library in New York.
What?
You owe $77 for Flea.
Here's a picture of me on January 6th.
You know what? I think it was out
Here
of
I am with Osama bin Laden.
Hey, oh my gosh, this might be like a first printing of it, but it does. I don't have the dust jacket for it, but it's interesting because it's like semi-fictional, but he also interweaves like stories about the band. But Dave Davies' book is called Kink, and that is like kind of like a typical rock star memoir. But what's cool about it is he was doing this shit in like the early mid 60s, stuff that like the Motley Crue guys are like bragging about, but he was like dressing in crazy clothes. He was sleeping with men and women, doing drugs, and he was pretty young too. So he writes about like that fun stuff, but also like the fighting in the band is hilarious. Like at one point, Mick Avery, the drummer, like threw a cymbal and it cut Dave Davies in the neck. And like the way he described it, so he could have cut his head off if he had done it the right way. But they were banned from playing shows in the United States for like 4 or 5 years, at the end of the 60s, which was like a crucial time that they could have, had some US time. But anyway, I don't know what happened to the copy of that book, so I can't show you that. But I'm going to make this my recommendation, even though I'm cutting in line and I haven't read the book. But I just found this the other day at a book sale in a library, and I thought it was appropriate because it's a memoir by James Brown. And the way I saw it in the spine, it was like, I saw it was like James Brown, written by Brown. And I was like, that'd be great if that James Brown wrote that. And sure enough, it's called James Brown. That's the name of the book, The Godfather of Soul, an autobiography by James Brown. So James Brown is the author of this.
Wouldn't it be great if it was written in the way James Brown talks? It was one long sentence. The page 2 times.
Cut the cord.
Intro. All right, we got
I'll make that my recommendation, and if somebody reads it, let me know how it is. Although I'll probably start reading it soon because I think he's a fascinating. I love his stuff, but I think he's a fascinating person. One of the greatest interviews I've ever seen is with, I can't remember it's a woman. I don't know, but he answers all of her questions like in song titles, and like he's like, "Cause I feel good," and she's like, "So you were accused of abusing your wife? Like what?" That's because I feel good. Like, I'm not doing stuff. Just put a link because it's worth watching. So yeah, that's my answers.
Say it loud. I'm on PCP and I'm proud.
Also, I'd like to add that Dean is notorious for gifting me a music memoir or usually some kind of music book for Christmas or birthdays. Always a good gift from Dean there with those autobiographies.
Thank you. All right, let's go to recommendations.
Yeah, we're running
although
low
Dan
time.
cutting the line.
Yeah. That's good. Nobody counts bingo.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So the only recommendation I have this week is there's a new video from a band I've mentioned here before called Yard Act. They have a new song called Rich. And so I recommend you check that out. It's a pretty interesting video. That's it.
Because I took so much time with my segment, I will only have one recommendation this week, but it's a hell of a recommendation. And if this video doesn't get 1,000 views, I'll recommend it next week. It is called Producing Heavy Punk on Inexpensive Gear. Manny Nieto interview and LA studio tour. This thing's about an hour and a half long, but it flies by and you'll watch it like a documentary. Manny was a guy who played guitar in LA punk bands. And what happened was at one point, his record company said to him, well, we'd like to give you $14,000 to go record with Steve Albini. And Manny said, well, how about you give me $11,000 and then I'll buy a bunch of studio equipment and that'll save money down the line. And the record company said yes. And then Manny hung up the phone. He's like, yeah. And they went, oh wait, I don't know anything about recording. So he called up Steve Albini and told him what he did. And Steve Albini was like, that's badass, dude. You want to come hang out on the couch and learn how to record stuff? This is one of those people. He's kind of like MC Large, where he's always very positive. There's nobody, I'm sure if anybody ever told him you can't do that, he didn't listen to him. He's just a fun guy. You can imagine him being the guy who always brings like extra beer to the party. He's produced The Breeders, which I don't care about that much about, but he also produced Health, which is a band that is who are very big fans of our own Joe Jack Talcum. He at one point he decided he was in Hawaii and people kept telling him about all these Chinese noise bands, so he decided he wanted to record them. So he called up this microphone company. He said, "You have a factory in China, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." He goes, "How about if I go over there, you give me a bunch of microphones, I'll travel around the country recording these bands and introducing them to the microphones." And they said yes. So he wound up in China for 2 years recording noise bands. He's traveling around China with a bunch of microphones. His paper said, "I'm going to go over there, pick up some equipment from the factory and test it," which isn't really a lie. So at one point he's in like some provincial area of China and the cops get a hold of him and he's got all these microphones and the cops take him in the thing and say, "All right, who are you?" And he said, "Where are you from?" He goes, "I'm from California." And they say, "Prove it. Sing Hotel California." So he has to sing Hotel California and they let him go. Like this one official's like, "Why are you letting him go?" He knows the words to Hotel California. It is an amazing thing. At one point, he talks about building his own ribbon mic. He's just, it's just every piece of equipment he points out has a story, and a lot of it, the guy here goes, "Hey, that looks really good." He goes, "Yeah, but it sounds awful." "I keep it. It looks good." It's just a really fun thing. Really positive guy. You just want to hang out with this dude. This is a super big recommendation. Again, producing heavy punk on inexpensive gear, Manny Nieto interview and LA studio tour. Please, we'll put up the stuff. Please watch it, and you'll probably want to watch it again.
Wow. I have only one recommendation, and it's for an album that came out last March, but I just found out about it last week because someone sent me a message. Some guy named Thomas Falk, and the album is called Bobby Ramoon. Have you heard of it? No. Okay, so I'm not alone. And it is it's like a mashup of Bob Marley and the Ramones, but the way I tried to find out more information about how it's recorded. The best I could determine was that it was an idea a couple guys had when they were drunk, and they actually followed through on it after, the next day. But they sampled Bob Marley somehow, and they took the vocals of Bob Marley and performed in the style of Ramones and mashed it together in the recording studio. And
Wow.
I'm not sure that's completely true, but that's what I read in one of the reviews for the album.
So they were like the band Gabba Gabba Hey, the band that combined ABBA and the Ramones.
Wow.
I guess so. But it does really sound like Bob Marley's voice. So maybe they really did somehow just get the voice to be taken off of the.
If they isolate, they could have isolated.
Yeah, you could isolate the voice and just time stretch it. Yeah.
Time stretch it. I guess you have the technology to do that these days.
Yeah. We all have the technology.
The opening track is a reggae version of a Ramones instrumental. And the Ramones song is Durango 95. They call it Durango 65. But all the rest of the songs are based on Bob Marley songs, but done in a Ramones style, as if Bob Marley joined the Ramones somehow. And it's really clever, and I really like it. And it goes by really fast. It's like 22 minutes long, but yeah, it's on Bandcamp. You can buy it for $0. You can name your price. And the Bandcamp, it looks like the Bandcamp label is out of France, but it also got released on vinyl, now out of print already, and on cassette, which I think you can still get. Like I said, I might be wrong. That might be out of print too, but there it is. It's called Bobby Ramone, Rocket to Kingston.
Wow.
And it's on YouTube. We'll put a link. The whole album's on YouTube for who knows how long it'll last there.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everybody great book recommendations.
But
Bye. Shame. 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 Shame.